Hello viewers, you welcome to another news review hour on Jamano Media and Products. We first begin with our headlines. IPC calls for peaceful parliamentary elections. Medical Research Council staff sues Nabek $6.5 million for injuring him. High Court to hear Sabali suit against IEC today. Court rejects investigative report implicating Permanent Secretary Banja. Truck owner which killed 13 pleads guilty. Those were the headlines. We now have the news in detail. The Inter-Party Committee (IPC) has issued a statement calling on all political parties and independent parliamentary aspirants to conduct themselves peacefully throughout the elections. The committee is established by political parties in the Gambia as a forum for inter-party dialogue and cooperation to promote peaceful political dialogues, credible electoral processes, foster national unity, and consolidate democracy and peace in the country. The committee, in a statement signed by its co-chairman Amulunyasi, said as Gambians prepare for the April 9, 2022 National Assembly elections to consolidate its democratic gains, all stakeholders must act in accordance with relevant frameworks to promote a peaceful and credible electoral process. All political parties are urged to respect the Janjambure Peace Pledge made ahead of the 2021 presidential election. The IPC also announced that it will hold its next quarterly breakfast meeting with all registered political parties tomorrow to call on them to fully recommit to constructive dialogue and comply with electoral regulations to ensure peaceful elections. Since its formation, IPC has facilitated constructive conversations between political tensions, particularly during contentious electoral processes and reform initiatives. In line with its mandate of promoting peaceful political processes, the IPC has continued to advocate for the tolerant and peaceful coexistence of political parties, especially during electoral cycles, the IPC added. The IPC said it has developed a new strategic plan 2022 to 2027 with 6 strategic priorities focused on consolidating the Gambia's young democracy through inclusive, issue-based, peaceful and tolerant coexistence among political parties and dialogues around critical reform agendas. In partnership with NDI and UNDP, the IPC is implementing a series of programs and activities to promote transparent, credible, and peaceful elections before, during, and after the elections. Already, the IPC has recommended the monitoring and enforcement of its code of conduct through a complaints hotline 2199930 and an online form available on all IPC social media platforms, the committee added. One Edward Duffer, staff of Medical Research Council, has instituted a $6.5 million civil suit against Nabek for specific and general damages and economic loss. The plaintiff disclosed that sometime in November 2019, whilst employees of NAWEC were carrying out work for extension and provision electricity supply to the new hospital at Alonghari in the Upper River region, connecting an overhead cable from one side to the other, his motorbike collided with the cable, which resulted to his bike crashing and sustaining injuries. The plaintiff, who said he is presently reformed as a result of the accident, has asked the High Court in Banjul to award him said amount of $6.5 million to him for general damages, mental and emotional trauma, and special damages of fracture and bruises he sustained, causing deformity of the right leg. Justice F.A. Achimbonga of the High Court in Banjul will today preside over the hearing of the suit filed by Momodu Sabali against the returning officer of the Independent Electoral Commission at the Brikama branch, the chairman of the IEC, and the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Momodu Sabali, a United Democratic Party aspirant for Busumbala constituency, has had his nomination rejected by the returning officer at the IEC branch in Birkama because he was adversely mentioned by the Janneh Commission. Mr. Sabali is seeking for order to set aside the IEC's decision to pave way for him to contest the 9th April National Assembly elections. The matter is set aside at this morning. A High Court judge yesterday rejected a downloaded investigative report published by journalist Mustafa K. Dabo of Malegan, implicating former Permanent Secretary Minister of Fisheries Bamba Banja. The former permanent secretary is accused of accepting bribe from a Chinese private company, which he denied. The prosecutor had wanted the court to tender the report through journalist Mustafa K. Dabo, who did a story on Banja in October 2020. The judge's decision not to admit the report following Banja's lawyer Abdullah Fatih's objection that the said report was a computer-generated document downloaded from a computer, despite the prosecution's argument that his witness is the author of the report and his proper custody. The prosecutor later attempted to withdraw tendering of the document, but defense lawyer Fatih protested that it was too late as he had already urged why the report must be tendered into evidence. In his testimony, Mr. Dabo said the implicating audio was shared with him and a BBC journalist. According to him, Banja's voice could be heard saying, "This one I will share with my minister," and a lot of other things. The story was that the Chinese were in his house purposely to give him $100,000. That was to be exchanged of a decision regarding a trawler seized by the Navy. Dabo said the trial continues. One Modufai, the owner of a truck involved in an accident, has pleaded guilty to permitting an unlicensed apprentice to drive his vehicle, resulting in a crash that killed 13 people in Farawa village on March 4th. According to the bill of indictment filed by police prosecutors, Mr. Fai on March 4, 2022, between the hours of 5 a.m. and 6 a.m., permitted one Aliu Jadama to drive a truck without a valid license and thereby causing the death of 13 people. The presiding magistrate Adoche, however, adjourned the matter to March 31st, when he is expected to deliver his judgment following Mr. Fai's plea. The apprentice Aliu Jadama was initially arraigned separately with charges of rash and negligence during causing death. However, he had pleaded not guilty to the charges and has since been remanded at the State Central Prison at Mile 2. Those were the stories for our today's newscast on the News Review Hour. But before we take a leave of you, let's take a recap on our top stories. IPC calls for peaceful parliamentary elections. Medical Research Council staff sues Nabek $6.5 million for injuring him. High Court to hear Sabali suit against IEC today. Court rejects investigative report implicating Permanent Secretary Banja. Truck owner which killed 13 pleads guilty. Those were the stories for today. Thank you for joining us with your presenter Maria McGillen. Do have a nice weekend.